Have you tried decluttering maybe a little bit at a time, hoping that the mess in your home and your life would just slowly disappear? Or have you ever done one of those massive purges and just decluttered a ton of stuff? Everything feels great, surfaces are clear, and then the mess just comes back? Well, today I want to explain to you why decluttering doesn't work and what does. In my last video, I was referencing Eugene Genlin's research, and what he found was that it wasn't the therapist, the type of technique they were doing, their experience, their intentions, their passion that allowed a client to change. It was actually the client themselves and what they did within that showed their ability to change and their success in the therapy. And more specifically, their ability to connect with their feelings, their ability to connect with this felt sense, and notice that alongside the problems and alongside what was being discussed. So, this ongoing connection to their body and their inner self. And so, well, why doesn't decluttering work? Similar reasons. So, the first reason is that if you just declutter without becoming aware of your patterns of why you created it to begin with, well, it's not going to change. It's just going to come back. And even if you do become aware of it, well, that alone, as I mentioned in my last video, awareness alone doesn't fully help you change. Because reason number two, a lot of the time, it's a triggered response that's bringing you into the past. So you're reliving the past, you're reliving these coping mechanisms that you use to survive, and that's what's creating the clutter in your overall life. And so reason number three is if you don't release that trauma in your body, it doesn't transform, it doesn't shift and change, and it stays the same and you have those same emotional reactions, then you're just going to keep on doing the same thing. So, well, what does work then? So I've already touched on it. One is that awareness. I've met a lot of people, I've worked with a lot of people who just didn't want to look at the why they had the clutter. There were a lot of excuses, a lot of reasons as to why it was there, but it had nothing to do with them. It was, oh, not the right storage solution, or I'm living with this person and they're doing this and that and the other. So definitely awareness is important as a first step. The second one is being able to connect it to the body. What are the emotions around that? What's the felt sense around that particular pattern? And working within the body and doing some sort of somatic work, for example. And that's what I'm going to talk about today is one specific technique that you can do to help you release that. And the third thing is definitely on the technical side. I'm a big believer in this balance between, doing that deeper work and that internal work. And then externally, well, what do you need to learn, know, or change? What skills do you need? What tools do you need to be more organized and to not have that clutter come back? So there's definitely a component of learning and technical side and a healing aspect to this, and it's having a holistic approach to the whole thing instead of just decluttering, because it does not work. So I mentioned earlier and in my last video a technique called focusing. It's a form of somatic work, and what somatic work or somatic experiencing or somatic healing is really talking about, it's about reconnecting or connecting the mind and the body. Brain retraining is great, but it's just mostly working with the brain, and 80% of your body communicates to your brain, and 20% of your brain communicates to your body. So what does that tell us? We need to be working with the body. There's lots of work done out there. The Body Keeps the Score is a great book. Your body remembers. So in focusing, it's a remembering without having to specifically remember the traumas. Sometimes you might get a flash of something, but it's done in a way that's so slow, the body will not tell you something unless it feels safe and unless it's ready to. And so that's the beauty of this technique. Another great thing about this technique that's so great is that you can do it alone, you can do it with a friend, or you can do it with someone who's trained. And it's almost like a way of living in a way similar to mindfulness, where it's something that you kind of do throughout the day. It's this checking in thing that you can do very quickly, Or you can set time aside and literally do it for maybe 5, 20, 30 minutes. And the key to it is that you're really just slowly connecting with your body, slowly going into those inner parts, and then seeing what comes up, what wants to be seen. Or you can do it where you're like, okay, once you've connected with your body, you can go, okay, what is it about that whole thing? What's that whole felt sense around that whole problem? And bring up a particular issue that you are dealing with. And by doing that in presence, not awareness, presence, where you actually are present and you're observing and you're in relationship with it, by doing that, you're not merging and over identifying or dissociating and disconnecting. And that's why it's so important to do this technique slowly, because then we don't get these like extremes where we're disconnecting or we're over identifying and we're fully immersed in that emotion. And by that part that's the piece that allows you not to have flashbacks during the process. So let me explain the process to you, and keep in mind there's so much wonderful literature out there on this technique. I've included my 2 blogs because there's just so much to say about this, so please do read them because I've just barely skimmed the surface on it. So let's get started on the 4 steps to focusing. In the training manual, it's 4 steps, and in the book written by Eugene Genlin, there's 6 steps. I'm going to walk you through the 4. And so the first step is coming in. So making sure that you have a quiet place to do this, and that you can not be disturbed, and that you're sitting comfortably. And you're going to slowly come to your body. And you might say things like, I'm feeling my feet on the ground. I'm sensing the surface that I'm sitting on. I'm connecting with my head and my arms. I'm going to the inner parts of my throat, my chest, and my belly. And you're doing this very slowly. And then you're sensing what is there. You're noticing maybe if you have some tension. And then once you've done this whole connection with your body, you're going to go, okay, well, what needs my attention right now? Or if you've picked something that you want to give attention to, then you then ask yourself, well, what is it about that whole thing around, my friend? What is the whole felt sense around that? And see what happens. And that brings you to number 2, the second step, making contact. Now, that's where you start to acknowledge what has come up. And again, when you're in presence, you're kind of observing it and you're being in relationship to it. And then you start to describe, well, it feels kind of tight and heavy. And then you want to see if that matches. And if it does match, you might feel a shift or like, oh, yeah, that's right. And that brings you to step 3, deepening the contact. And that's where you're keeping this something inside of you. And when we say there's something inside of you, you're disengaging from it. You're not over-identifying with it. You're allowing it to be a part of you and just being a friend to it, being a companion to it. And that's where deepening contact comes into play. You're literally just being with what's there and seeing if it wants to tell you something. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. You can, be curious and ask, what's its point of view? You can see, well, how does it want me to connect with it? And when you check out my blogs, I have lots of prompting things that you can ask yourself during that process. During that part where you're deepening the contact, the other thing to note is that you might have a symbol come up or a flash of an image. And in a way, this is the body telling you something that needs attention or releasing or giving you information about what that is all about. Because if you try to do it with the mind, if you try to analyze a situation, for example, about a friend, and you try to do it with the mind, you're not going to get the same depth than if you connect with the body and this felt sense. So once you've connected for a while and you feel ready to move on, maybe you've had a big shift. It could be a physical sensation, it could be an energy sensation, it could be an aha. And even if you don't, just giving that something, that part of you that needs attention, is powerful. And getting into that practice is powerful. And the most powerful thing that I've noticed for me is it gets rid of the victimhood and the over identifying. And so once you're kind of done with that and you're ready to move forward, then the fourth step is coming out. Because you're in this deep state, and it's not a meditation because you're very aware, you're very alert, you're not trying to relax. You're going to thank your body, you're going to thank the wisdom, you're going to acknowledge that you will come back to that space again to give whatever needs attention, and then slowly come back to your body into the room in time. And again, it's coming in slowly and coming out slowly. That's what prevents the triggers, and that's what allows the body to communicate to you what needs to be heard and seen and understood. So I hope that was helpful in helping you see, like, okay, I can declutter, but it's not really going to work unless I really go within to understand what's going on and finding a way to release and shift and transform that. I highly recommend trying this technique. And just to recap, the first step is making contact, so that's connecting with your body, seeing what comes up. 2, making contact, where you're just sitting there and observing and seeing, like, okay, what's this? Let me see if I can describe it and name it. And then 3, deepening that contact and really sitting and being company with what came up and seeing if any images come up, any understanding. And then when you're ready, coming out very slowly and thanking your body in the process that it has gone through. Thanks so much for watching, and if you haven't already, remember to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos on somatic work that will help you declutter and organize your life for good.